Welcome to episode 128 of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Costello.
And I'm filling in for Param. I'm Alexander Agunas, the co-host of the Private Sanctuary podcast.
I believe everyone knows who you are by now, Alex, but just in case, after we do our interview segment, we'll fill everyone in, remind them why you're so great.
Oh, okay. I like that.
But speaking of great, our guest today has a reputation. Let's just say if he turns out to be the last Hell's Vengeance iconic, no one will be surprised. So, to talk about the evil side of the Pathfinder role-playing game and the Pathfinder campaign setting and the Hell's Vengeance adventure path is Pathfinder designer Stephen Radney-MacFarland. Hi, Stephen.
Hey.
Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be on here.
Oh, that's nice. So it's going well for me, but as people may hear in the background, it's not going so well for my daughter Scarlett. Hopefully that passes and doesn't distract everybody. I have a feeling it might be your aura that's setting it up.
I do have that effect on young women.
So let's start right there. No, let's start with this reputation that you have. Like, people associate you with evil. Why is that, and how do you feel about it?
Well, to be fair, right? I was born on Christmas Day in Washington D.C. during the Nixon administration, so let's just get that out of the way. I did grow up with Satan.
Prophecy?
Yes, absolutely. I did grow up with Satan. I had a dog named Satan growing up. So to be honest, I have no idea. I'm a lovable, freewheeling kind of guy. I've never been to prison, but maybe jail. And I love metal. I love role-playing games. Hail Satan.
Well,
I have no clue. What's that?
Have you ever kicked a pig?
Maybe once or twice.
Have it coming.
And that's not a euphemism.
Well, I mean, there's the association with you and the iconic anti-paladin. What's the appeal there?
Well, the anti-paladin needed a name, and I decided its name was Stephen because because that guy is the most metal iconic we've got. And it's a close race, but. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be any iconic in the game, you want to be the anti-paladin. So I just decided one day its name was Stephen, and that was what was going to be on the back of my card, and that's what we're going to do because all of us, we take a piece of artwork and put it on the back of our card. And they didn't let me choose at first, and they gave me the Summoner Gnome, which I was like, yeah, that's not going to fly, folks. So I had to find something a little closer to my personality. I love eviL. eviL's awesome, right? That's where it all comes from. So as a story, when I was a kid, teenager, playing D&D back in the day, second edition, my father, who never quite understood the game, he thought it was kind of cool, and he liked the fact that I was reading a lot and everything else, but he didn't understand why all these kids were coming to the house, and I was running these games, and they would come back week after week after week and be just as excited as they before. And so he asked one of my players, this guy Aaron, who's still a friend of mine, and he's like, "Why do you guys keep on coming back?" And his eyes just got wide, and he said, "Because your son is the most evil son of a I have ever encountered." And I was like, "Sweet, yeah." So, I'm a very abusive parent when it comes to GMing games. I try to beat people down, and they just come back for more and love me for it. So, role-playing games allow me to sort of be a cruel jerk in a way that I try not to be in real life, and I'm not always successful.
And
So
were you
what's with
trying to cultivate that reputation, or was it that's just what came naturally to you?
I think that's just what came naturally. I mean, I'm actually the nicest bastard you'll ever meet, or so I've been told. I've been told I'm a real sweetheart until I'm not.
That's fair.
Mileage may vary. I don't know.
So what's with the fascination with evil that you have anyway?
Part of it is has a lot to do with I'm a very secular person, a very openly secular person. I believe that acts are evil. I believe that a lot of people, sort of they get very superstitious, and I'm not. And so I kind of like the aesthetics of what's considered evil, just because it freaks some people out. For the silliest reasons in the world. I'm actually an extremely moral person who lives a very moral life. But, if I can have skulls and demons and devils and whatever surrounding me, and have superstitious people freak out, I just think that's hilarious.
Now let's talk about acts as evil acts, because Paizo recently released the first couple of parts of Hell's Vengeance, which is the first evil adventure path,
Yeah.
which must involve a lot of evil acts. So you're comfortable with that, but how has response been so far?
The response I've gotten from folks has actually been really good. There's definitely a group of people out there who strongly believe that and strongly know that they want to play a game where they're playing heroes and they're doing heroic things. I personally like my fantasy a little bit more gray, if not darker. For instance, I'm absolutely in love right now with Joe Abercrombie's work. Just because it crosses those boundaries, and a lot of older sword and sorcery, because it kind of crosses those boundaries. So the folks who always want to be the knights in shining armor and always want to be on the right side of the good and evil spectrum in fantasy, I don't think are going to care for this adventure path at all. But if you like a little bit of gray area and you're comfortable with the fact that basically our game is built upon the ideas of murder and larceny to begin with, and maybe you can take down the veil and just revel in the fact that it is kind of a power fantasy, that it's okay if in fantasy your moral compass goes a little askew. I think you're going to enjoy it a lot. I think the stories in it are rich and fun and interesting. You get to do things that you wouldn't normally do in a Pathfinder game. You get to revel in your dark side a little bit. I think it's actually really cathartic.
Now, we are going to be taking questions from the audience. We've got a live audience here on Twitch. If you are not watching right now, how you would do it is that when we announce on our Facebook page that we're having a live show, you can go to twitch.tv/nodirection at the appointed time, join in the conversation, ask any questions, and we will feed them to Stephen or whoever the guest is at the time as the episode goes on. And one thing I want to clarify before we get questions about this is that you didn't write anything about Hell's Vengeance.
You did an adventure path, one of the volumes, didn't you?
Did you do one of the volumes?
I,
I'm so
no,
sorry.
No,
There's
one of
so
them
many
is
more
coming out.
questions I can ask.
For Queen and Empire, which is the fourth edition to that, which is going to come out, I think, in May or June. I've seen it. It's beautiful. Rob McCreary did an absolute, and he always does, an excellent job developing it. I went through the text again somewhat recently, and I'm like, man, Rob just does a fantastic job with these things. And it's a very political. A lot of it deals with intrigue, if not the intrigue rules in particular. I kind of went my own path on some of those things, but it's not nearly as brutal as some people might expect from me. There's a lot of, in the beginning, you get to go to parties and you deal with politics in Agorian, and I got to redesign the map of that city. And by the time I was done writing that adventure path, I really liked that city. It felt like a version of New York that I grew up in some ways, that is long gone after Giuliani, and for the better. Don't get me wrong, but. Yeah, so yeah, I did. It's my the first time other than Back Matter that I've done an adventure path, and let me tell you, adventure path writing is hard. I've done 2 adventure paths in the past year. This one and one for Green Ronin, and yeah, I'm done writing adventure paths at least for a few months.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't think of you as an adventure path writer. I was bringing you on because it's evil, and you have to have Stephen on for an even episode. Wow, I didn't actually realize that you'd.
Ryan hit the jackpot, folks.
So then I'm going to lift the band. If people have specific questions about the adventure path and your part in particular, are you okay talking about it? Cool.
Yeah. I'll try to. I mean, it's going to be a little harder for me to talk about things that are not involved with my adventure, but yeah, I'll try to give it my best shot. So,
all right. Well, where I was going with that before I was proven completely wrong with my facts was that you're a rules guy, and I'd like to talk about how the Pathfinder role-playing game already can already be used for running an evil campaign. Like the rules are already in the system. It's not like you had to release Ultimate Evil.
No, we definitely did it, and Rob and I, Rob McCurry and I did a seminar the last PaizoCon, and I did one at Tokyo and Tulsa as well that talked about exclusively about running evil campaigns. And the funny thing about it is there's really not a whole lot of difference between the two, other than just tone. There is an issue with making sure that your players can get enough healing, because evil clerics are not that great with the healing. And I think I'd probably house rule it to allow evil characters to be healed with evil channels, or at least feed into an option like that. Or at least make sure that you've got enough Cure Light 1 sticks floating around where you can kind of do it. But I mean, yet again, the real issue is just about tone and story, who you work for. And evil campaigns do give you the option to fight critters that you would normally just talk to, or that you've got to jump through hoops in order to get into a fight with, and stuff like that. But the great thing about evil campaigns is you're going to fight evil things too, because evil people don't get along with other evil people. There's a point of it that I think that an evil campaign in some ways is a little bit more honest and a little bit more brutal and a little bit more willing to get into the fracas more than sometimes good campaigns are, or purely good campaigns are. So yeah, I don't think you really have to change that much. Except
what are some of the options that you usually don't see show up in a traditional heroic campaign that you get to play with in an evil campaign?
Well, one, the anti-paladin, which rocks, and you get to have role-playing encounters with things that you would normally get to kill on site, which can be really exciting and fun. Role-playing with a demon, or trying to seduce a succubus, or any of those things, or delve into forbidden magic, which you would typically try to burn on site and try to save the world from. But delving into those darker secrets, I think, can be story-wise, can be a heck of a lot of fun. Where your first inclination is to entirely destroy things. You can also sit back and kind of laugh at moral arguments that you as a person might actually really sympathize with, like, don't you want to make sure that the village is not destroyed? And just kind of laugh and go, no, I want to burn that thing, and here are the reasons why. And because it's make-believe, nobody gets hurt, and you can delve into those sort of darker aspects of the game, and maybe have a little bit of trouble sleeping at night, but also knowing that it's just a bunch of make-believe things. So you can really delve into interesting stories that may make some people, feel uncomfortable, and then you shouldn't play it, right? You've really got to have sort of my love of just exploring forbidden subjects from time to time. If that's not your thing, yeah, run away quickly.
What kind of subjects do you consider forbidden?
Torture.
Yeah, without
like,
going into too many details, I guess.
Yeah, the fact that and I actually kind of enjoy taking a look at what's really there. So there's a lot of so-called torture porn out there, which 24 did a lot of, and the idea that you can solve the world's problem with torture, but actually what torture has been able to do historically is just get people to confess to things that you want to confess, right? Them to confess to, or to entirely demoralize a population around you. It really deals with questions of power, and who has it and how to wield it and to get your way, rather than doing the right thing. And once you have your way, what do you do with it? But I also really enjoy shows like Deadwood's one of my favorite shows, and there might not be a single good character. Well, the Doctor maybe, but in that show, right? They're all looking out for their own self-interest. And to be a little bit freer with that, I think makes really interesting and compelling stories. But mileage may vary.
A lot of GMs will complain that in a traditional heroic adventure, they want it to feel like Tolkien, and it ends up feeling like Monty Python. In an evil campaign, how do you keep everything from just feeling like Snidely Whiplash? Like a serious tone that indulges evil but doesn't overindulge.
That is kind of difficult, and the stereotype there is that eventually everybody will turn on them on each other. But I think what a GM really has to do in both situations is give the players and the characters in the party a reason to work with one another, to go after a goal. Goals a lot of times aren't intrinsically evil or good, but yeah, being able to find the reasons for the party to work with one another. There is this sort of juvenile fun, and I think in a lot of ways that a successful evil campaign is also a game played by mature adults, right? That realize that burning down every village is not a good idea just because it's evil. You need to make smart decisions to achieve goals. And I really think that the Hell's Vengeance Adventure Path does a very good job of keeping you on task. And one of the things that I try to do for Queen and Empire was there's always a task and there's always a reason. And it's not like you're going to walk into the capital of Cheliax and just start burning things. That's not what you're there for. You're there to be part of a larger mission, to make sure that your side wins the war, to make sure that you're not just some pawn in the war that's going to happen, that you're a mover and a shaker, and that you align yourself with the right people and make sure that your side wins by any means necessary.
Now, a lot of people I know that run evil campaigns or are considering evil campaigns still ban chaotic evil. How can you work a chaotic evil character into an evil campaign without it just being a license to disrupt everything? Or can you?
I think you can, but it takes a really canny player to actually do it. And here's why. Because everybody wants to be in the spotlight all the time. It's one of the reasons, right? To be honest, 9 times out of 10, I'd rather be a GM than a player in a game. I don't like waiting my turn. I want to be able to be able to do things at all times. But I think if you can play this kind of incredibly cool, Incredible Hulk character where at times you're restrained, and then when you're needed, you just go absolutely nuts on the battlefield. Again, and it's because partially is I'm in love with his books. Joe Abercrombie has this wonderful character, Logan Ninefingers, who when making the Rager. Damn it! Sorry, my brain is not working right.
It'll come to you.
The Logan Ninefingers character, right? He is a really kind of decent guy for most of the books, and then every once in a while he becomes the Bloody Nine, and he just does the most awful, terrible things you can ever imagine. And it's one of the best, the Blood Rager, right? Like, he just loses it and just does awful, terrible things. And I think you could play a chaotic evil character if you sort of realize that you can't be chaotic all the time, or there's or there's really good reasons why you should be chaotic at certain points and sort of tone it down at other ones. A lot of it has to do with taking a look. Some people take a look at alignment, no matter what that alignment is, and look for reasons for why they are being a jerk. And you really need to take a look at alignment and ask yourself, how am I moving along the story of the campaign? How am I complementing the other people that I play with? How am I making my gaming experience better? And it's kind of a very metagamey way to take a look at it. But I think, if you want to play in good, stable, and fun games, it behooves you to use alignment as not a crutch for bad behavior, but as a tool for great narration.
It's interesting. To use a comic analogy, usually when people talk about a chaotic evil character, they talk about someone like the Joker, who is a manipulator and he's always up to no good. But a character like Doomsday would also be chaotic evil, and he's constantly being manipulated and constantly working for greater powers. So a class like a Barbarian would actually be a great example of a chaotic evil character that, for some reason, works best as like someone that would stay within the party, would keep working towards the party goals.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Another thing is, so Valhalla Rising, which is another one of my favorite sort of terrible people movies or characters, is he stays restrained most of the time until he's not. And in a lot of ways, you can't be chaotic all the time. Chaos works best when it bursts out into small, violent frenzies, which is one of the reasons why I think the Barbarian class is so iconic and reaches people so well. It's like, most of the time I'm a fun guy you can hang out with, and then don't get in my way. While lawful and neutral characters are a little bit more constant in what they're doing. Although lawful can also be the opposite, where they will do terrible, mostly lawful evil, terrible evil things behind your back, and machinate to such an extent where you think you understand that person until you realize you don't. They're actually manipulating events to make sure that they or their side gains the upper hand, which can be just as terrible as the chaos that can rain down from a barbarian or a blood rager or somebody who is out to sow terrible things within the world just cause.
I want a t-shirt that says you can't be chaotic all the time.
So here's a question. Oh, I was going to ask a question.
I was going to take questions from chat, but if you have a question, Alex, go for it.
Okay. So you were talking before about people using evil alignments as kind of like a crutch for bad behavior. What other types of stereotypes do you think that people use evil alignments for? Like, I get to be evil, so I'm going to do this terrible thing to the people at my table. Like, what kind of things do you think you should avoid?
Well, I'm going to switch that around on you. It's not just evil, right? I've seen plenty of lawful good characters who had the sort of morality of Archie Bunker, right? Where it's all like, this is the way it's got to be, and you're a bunch of meatheads and everything else, right? Or or this is the way I want it, and it's law, and it's good, and here's my argument for it. I think everybody has a tendency, and in humanity, it's partially how we make moral arguments in our heads. A lot of times we go with a gut reaction and then try to justify it like a gaggle of bad lawyers. And there's been studies that kind of prove that. And I think alignment brings out that sort of aspect into role playing behavior as well. Is people tend to go after their own personal self interest and then try to justify it with whatever moral code that they cling to at the time. So I like alignment in a lot of ways because of the way that it sort of talks about the struggles of law and good and chaos and evil that are intrinsic into most narration and fantasy adventures, but it also starts a lot of just terrible arguments because these are things that really can lead to awful, terrible, bad behavior. Not only personally, but on the playground of role playing and Pathfinder as well.
So taking some questions from chat. First one is a very yes or no question, but it's also one that might be a little outside your field of expertise.
I'm going to say maybe. Because it's a yes. No, go on.
That's probably the likely answer, right. Honestly.
Mortunados, I'm going to say is the person's name, says you can play portions of APs for PFS credit, but you can only play good characters in PFS. Do you know if you'll be able to play Hell's Vengeance for PFS credit?
Holy crap! I was looking on a board of all of the things that PFS folks need to do in the next few months, which was mind-boggling.
One board?
Yeah, well, it's really taken up a wall in that office. It's frightening to look at. Linda was showing me today, and I'm like, and I kept on looking up and wanting to look away. It's almost like the sun. It'll burn you. And I could have sworn I saw something about Hell's Vengeance, but I don't know the answer to that. My guess, if by hook or by crook, PFS can find a way to have you play that. They will, but it's probably not first on their list of priorities. They've got a lot of bigger fish to fry.
Well, that kind of ties into Caleb T. Gordon's question. Can you play an evil campaign without using alignment? So let's say specifically Hell's Vengeance. How would that work if we just took alignment out or even just had no evil characters?
I think you could absolutely play it with a bunch of neutral characters, right? There are certain mechanical things that sort of hinge on your alignment, and there are certain aspects of the campaign that play on that. But I think overall it's a really good story. And if people wanted to play that story, you don't need the alignment to do it. It really is a story about a kingdom and a group of people who are vying to try to win a war, and the background of how they plan to do that and keep power and put forward their power. The whole thing is really quite political. So you could definitely use like a lot of the Unchained options on getting rid of alignment or using different forms of alignment, or you could just throw alignment out the window in general and just play the fantastic story that's in that adventure path and be happy with it. I think if you wanted to put together a group of paladins to try to play that adventure path, you might have some issues, but a good GM could help you through it too.
Now you've touched on this, but this is a much older question in chat, so we'll see if you have any final thoughts. Imperiosaur asks, how is writing an adventure path for evil characters different from writing one for traditional murder hobos?
Probably not much, really. I mean, and I've made this argument many times. Is the alignment part is really just window dressing. As long as the campaign you're running has a compelling story that makes the players want to become involved with it, and they feel investment. The rest of it is just down to personal taste. The older I get, and I've read way too much philosophy to be a sane person, is Nobody in fantasy role playing games is actually that good. They would just put down their sword and go be a farmer or something, or start an orphanage and everything else. Right. The things that you do in the course of a typical